And welcome back to Creative Thinkers. Again, my name is Miguel Valenzuela, and today we have the president of EPCC with us, Dr. Serrata. Dr. Serrata, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Valenzuela. What a pleasure for me to be with you today.
Oh, I'm super excited to be here. I want to talk to you about who you are a little bit, how creativity plays a part in your life. So let's start about talking a little bit about when you were young.
Sure.
You're not originally from El Paso. You came from the Rio Grande Valley. When you were there, what kind of influences did you have?
Yeah, so born and raised in South Texas, in Brownsville, the southern tip of Texas. Third generation on one side, at least fourth generation on the other. When I was in my undergrad, I had a faculty member who said, "You don't sound like you're from Texas." And I said, "No, I don't have that Texas twang, but I can guarantee you I'm born and raised in this state." Influencers were teachers. I was very fortunate. My mom was an aide at the school that I went to, the elementary school I went to.
Oh, wow.
And so she always made sure that I had the best teacher at the school. And so, growing up, I went through kindergarten through sixth grade. At that time, elementary school was through sixth grade. Then junior high was seventh and eighth, and then high school 9th through 12th. But in elementary in particular, my mom always made sure I had the best teacher. At that time when I started was Ebony Heights Elementary, and then it became Martin Elementary. And was fortunate. My teachers were instrumental. I can name several different teachers. Mrs. Little in third grade, Miss Armstrong in fourth grade, Miss Lehman in fifth grade. They were incredibly instrumental, and they chose to see parts of me that they thought had potential. And they thought, you're talented in this area, William. If you work hard, you can do X, Y, and Z. So my teachers were always. And then I got into middle school or junior high, and Miss Benavides was a math teacher who was also instrumental for me. I can name so many different teachers along the way. They really were impactful for me. Even in my undergraduate, Dr. David Myers was an English faculty member that I had, who was instrumental in me switching from, engineering into English. I didn't go off to college to get a degree in English. I went off to be an engineer, and 3 years in, I determined I didn't have the discipline or desire. But for whatever reason, his class clicked with me and ended up getting a bachelor's and a master's in English.
And as far as creativity is concerned, because you talk about masters and bachelors in English, I know that when you put together books or any kind of thing that you write, we're always focusing on how to get that idea across. When you think about thinking outside the box and being creative, how important is that when writing? And I'm sure that helped you in what you're doing today.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely correct. And I think that creativity, and there's certain aspects. So I would always tell my students when I would teach English, I would tell my students, look, some of you are incredibly gifted writers. And I would be very honest with them. I don't think that I'm a gifted writer at all.
Interesting.
I said, from my perspective, I'm more of the literature side. And so I can pick apart the pieces of a story, and I can be a very good critic and critique it.
Right.
But I would tell my students, you all are going to be the good writers. You all. And so I would see so many talented writers, and I would really let them know, look, you're fantastic. You just need to continue to hone your craft. So for me, it was more the analytical piece of looking at, and finding the segments of the story. And I think, quite frankly, my math background, loved math and science growing up, and loved math until I got to engineering calculus 3, where numbers weren't a part of math. It wasn't as fun anymore.
Right.
But I really enjoyed that part of it, and the analytical piece of saying, okay, here's this piece of the story, here's this piece of the story, and how do they fit together? Those were the things that I was able to do and able to teach it. And when I was still teaching literature, we don't get to teach as many literature classes anymore, but literature was one of my favorite pieces, to be able to tell students, okay, do you see how these pieces of the stories relate and how they fit together?
And when they're fitting those pieces together, as I'm sure you have through all of the facets of your life, how have you brought these to fruition in thinking outside the box or thinking differently, I think?
Yeah, for me, it's both, and I'm fortunate. I'm fortunate that, I had a lot of math and science background, and then I had a lot of the arts as well, a lot of the humanities. And, my English courses, for me, they really came together. And then if you look at the kind of formal educational training that I had, I went with a bachelor's in English, went and got a master's in English, and then when I was looking at doctoral programs, they brought, A&M was back in South Texas, and they were looking at two options. They said, we have educational administration, which is what I was doing and wanted a PhD in, or we have human resource development.
Okay.
Which was, I had no clue what HRD was, but 9 of the 10 of us chose human resource development. So I ended up getting a PhD in human resource development. But it really was a combination of business principles and adult education principles.
Right.
And so for me, learning is a big part of this, and just being able to pull those pieces together. So I feel like I'm pretty well rounded with regards to having, a lot of the analytical skills that math and science bring to the forefront, but then on the creative side of having a lot of the English courses and literature courses that really brought that to fruition for me. So from my perspective, it's that combination. I've been really fortunate. So I can put, the math skills to use and look at the analytical pieces of a problem or of a challenge, but then also look at the creative pieces and say, okay, here's how we can potentially overcome this. And, I think it's never me alone. There's so many people that are a part of this, but being able to have both sides of the brain, so to speak,
right,
functioning at the same time has been incredibly beneficial for me.
And it's always beneficial to bring all of these things together. But one of the things that you were talking about is how you have brought all of these elements to fruition within what you're doing. What kinds of things have you done at the college since you've been here for the past 10 years where you have kind of used these tools?
Yeah, so part of it is, and again, it's always the team as a whole, but if you look at it, we've had some superintendents who've come in who've had some very strong vision of what they're looking at, and we work together to try and create a shared vision of how we make the community better. From my perspective, it really is about creating a college going and a college graduating culture. And so going to college is incredibly important, but you don't reap the benefits unless you complete. Unless you complete a certificate, complete an associate's degree, go on and move forward with a baccalaureate degree. And so, I've continued to focus on the 4 pillars: engagement, partnerships and pathways, creating a college going culture, and completion. But really the two C's, VPCC, are the most important, creating that college going culture to try to make sure that our community understands the importance of higher education, and then completion, that they understand that you have to finish. Going is good, but you got to finish that credential, and then you can start over and move forward for the next one. So for me, as we move forward, you look at certain things such as, dual credit in early college high schools.
Right.
Those are incredibly important. The data is overwhelming when students participate, that they're going to matriculate after they graduate from high school, and then their success rates, they outperform every other segment, not just at the college, they outperform every other segment of the student body at the university. So those are the kinds of things that we've looked at and we've worked together to create. Right now, the pandemic, and coming out of the pandemic, hopefully that the Omicron is the last variant that we have to deal with.
Right.
We see the numbers continuing to come down.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully as we continue to move forward, we're able to now reach further down into the second and third, fourth quartiles of high school graduates and help them understand that college is for them as well.
Mm-hmm.
I know the workforce is alluring, in particular right now, as wages have increased rather dramatically.
Correct.
I just need them to understand that unfortunately those wages for frontline positions, they'll come back down, and they need to be prepared for the next step. And so that really is about going to college. And so those are the kinds of things that we've been able to implement together. We've done well. We've done extremely well with our early college high schools. When I got to the institution, we had 6.
Mm-hmm.
And we now have 27 early college high schools right now. And I tell the team, I know that there's other parts of the state and nation that have more early college high schools.
Right.
I've yet to see one that has more successful. Right now, 72% of our high school students receive their associate's degrees before they graduate from high school. The national average is 22%.
Oh, wow.
So we're, El Paso, Texas, and the students that we serve, many of which are first generation, they're over 50 percentage points higher than the national average. I'm incredibly proud of that, and our community should be as well.
I think that has a lot to do with the professors and instructors that we have here,
No doubt.
obviously. Is there something that we, me being one of them, have available to us? I know that we have that faculty development. Is that one of the biggest tools that you guys have to kind of help us move forward?
I think that faculty development has been phenomenal, and the folks that lead it have been great. Many of them are faculty members themselves or start out. I think that they have been phenomenal, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say, you know, our faculty, from my perspective, they have been so flexible during the entire pandemic. You know, if you'd asked any president in March of, you know, before March 13th of 2020, do you think that you can take, you know, 90+% of your courses and put them all online? And none of us would have said it was possible. And yet in 2 weeks we did it.
Yeah.
And our faculty were at the forefront, obviously IT and all the support areas, but our faculty's made that work, and they've been amazing. I think professional development is a part of it. I think the culture, you know, the culture in El Paso is a big part of that as well. We feel somewhat isolated. We work really closely together, the college, the university, our school districts, and we show folks, the rest of the state and nation, what we're capable of. And I think that starts with our faculty. I'm very proud of the fact that, that with regards to the diversity of our faculty, we're about 66, almost 67% of our faculty is Hispanic.
Oh, wow. I
don't think you find another institution in the nation that can compete with that. And it's been organically achieved over the 50 years of the institution's existence.
And when you talk about the faculty and how, as a group, we all come together and try to bring these ideas to fruition, how important is it for the students and the faculty to come together, and what kind of tools exist there? Because I think a lot of times the students sometimes feel a little lost, even though we're kind of grooming them to bring them through. How important is that?
You know, it's incredibly important, and that's the piece that I cannot overemphasize. You know, if I was a student, I would hope someone would emphasize to me that connect with your faculty members.
True.
Get to know your faculty members. Our faculty are so endearing. They're so willing to help our students, to reach out, to share with students the trials and tribulations that they've had on their way up. And I think that that's incredibly important. For me, you know, that's the engagement piece of what we focus on. And the most powerful connection is an engagement between a faculty and a student. That's the only reason I was able to make it through my undergrad, is I connected with David Myers. Dr. Myers, you know, made me feel smart and connect in his classroom, and then I switched majors in English, and everything became different. It became easier. It didn't become a chore any longer. It became an opportunity to learn. I was very fortunate, and we have so many faculty members that are just like that, that they connect with our students, and then our students benefit tremendously from that connection.
You know, one of the things that you just mentioned a second ago is the trials and tribulations that students and both faculty go through. One of the reasons why I asked you to be our guest is because I really wanted to get kind of an insight of where the college is at this moment. And right before you, actually two guests prior to you, I interviewed an ex-student, and I'm not talking she's been graduated for 4 or 5 years. I'm talking she graduated just in December. And I was so impressed with all of the things that she has been able to kind of use and talk about when talking about school and education. So my point is, why in the world is education so important?
Yeah, so education is incredibly important, and again, folks think, you know, when I talk about it, well, you're self-serving. You're talking about the goals of the college. That's true, but education is incredibly important. If you look, you know, from my perspective, what's past is prologue, and if you look at the Great Recession in 2008, so not that far away, you know, 2008, the Great Recession hit. It hit us in Texas in 2011, and you know, our unemployment rose dramatically, and our enrollments rose dramatically. If you look at from the depths of the Great Recession, from 2008 to pre-pandemic, there was about 12 million new jobs. And so I want to make sure everyone hears me, new jobs.
Right.
Of those 12 million new jobs, over 99% of those new jobs went to individuals with degrees and certificates.
Wow.
Yeah, only about 80,000 jobs nationally went to individuals with a high school diploma or less. So what that showed me, the recession showed that we're going to become more and more of a knowledge society.
True.
So those that have the credentials, that have proven that they have an ability to think critically, if it's a technical degree to actually do a task, our nurses, obviously, they're in technical degree programs. They've shown that they have the ability to do certain things. But even in the general academic transfers, those show that you can think critically, that you can learn. But all these jobs were provided to individuals who had those degrees and certificates. And so from my perspective, as we come out of the pandemic, right now the economy has shifted dramatically, and we're hearing a whole lot about labor shortages.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a reason for those labor shortages. If you look at the population, what we saw is, and what the data has shown us, is that the individuals that are 26 and older in 2021,
Mm-hmm.
those individuals all the way up to 75 and above, almost 10 million of them dropped out of the workforce. So we have the great, you hear about the great resignation, the great
Correct.
retirement, but the segments of our population that are actually increased in the workforce currently,
Mm-hmm.
the 18 to 26 year old, there's 5 million more of them in the
Mhm.
workforce right now.
So
So
are they working, or are they seeking work?
they're working. There's 5 million more that are working. There's many
Okay.
more that are seeking work, but there's 5 million more that are in the workforce, and they're earning entry-level wages that used to be minimum wage that are
Mhm.
now $13, $15, $17 an hour.
Right.
I'm very happy for them. They deserve those wages, and I don't begrudge anyone earning a good wage. I just need them to plan for the future.
True.
And so what we know, again, what's past this prologue, is as we come out of these economic downturns, that education and credentials will be even more valuable. And I want to make sure that they have an opportunity to earn that degree or certificate.
Yeah, this, as we say, this is the best place to start.
And finish.
That's right.
Yes.
When we're thinking about things like
Yep.
that, how important is it for us to relay those ideas, to start and finish that to our student body?
Yeah, I
because
think
as you
it's-
said, one of the issues that we have, sorry for interrupting,
not
but
at all.
one of the issues that we have is sometimes not all of them finish the, are they immediately going into another university? Are they going somewhere else? Or are some of them just kind of laying low for a while?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so what we see is there's a significant segment of our society, and I've talked to the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board Commissioner, Commissioner Keller. We have, Texas has approximately 3 million adults that have credits but no credential.
Wow.
And so we've got to get them back in the mix and help them get that credential so that they can continue earning a living wage and beyond. And then also that first time in college student, we have to help them be successful. So what we see is we see in society a mix of both. We have some students who choose not to go immediately, but we have many adults that have credits but no credential. We need them both. Again, we see the labor shortage in our state, in our region, in the nation as a whole. We're going to have to make sure that we're able to fill those positions. We're going to have to make sure that the individuals filling them have the credentials that are necessary.
Why are credentials so important? Because I understand that when you have the credentials, you're able to elevate yourself economically.
That's right.
And how is that going to help the general kind of idea of where we live, our environment?
Absolutely. So, it's always about a better quality of life. And so what we've seen is the data is overwhelming. The more you learn, the more you earn, and the less likely you are to be unemployed. And so that's where the credentials are incredibly important, that the individual gets the credential. And you're right, what it does is it opens up so many more opportunities. It opens up increased wages above and beyond what the entry level is currently paying. It opens up benefits to our population, so that the wage may be decent, but then the long-term benefits aren't necessarily as I'm losing my train of thought. They're not as beneficial to the individual. And so we have to make sure that they understand that you're looking at healthcare benefits. All of these things are incredibly important. And in particular for our younger students, they think, that there's so much time ahead. I started my undergraduate 35 years ago, and in a blink of an eye, here I am in my
Yes,
mid-50s
I agree.
now. I'm in my mid-50s now, and I'm closer to retirement than I am to starting my career.
Yeah, I
and
agree.
so those things are important for folks to think the long term, and to ensure that they are setting themselves up for a beneficial future. With regards to why is it important? Well, the more the population. So if you look at, the most educated cities in our nation, they also have the highest quality of living. And so we want to make sure that we provide that. And I think El Paso is an incredible community. Want to make sure that we are improving it as much as we can. And a lot of that is the educational attainment level of our population.
And one of the things that I speak about in my classes is that I talk about how important it is to incorporate art into your life. Art basically is creativity. The show is literally called Creative Thinkers. And I'm sure that you've seen the changes in our city. How important is that connection for you, being an educator?
Yeah, it's incredibly important, and the kinds of things that, growing up, we grew up poor, just like most of our community, and you don't see the kinds of benefits that the community has to offer. You don't know about museums, you don't know about the arts and culture, and theater, all of the different things that are available. I want to make sure that my two boys, that they're exposed to those things, that they have that opportunity. And I see this community really investing in itself. The children's museum's getting ready to come up. I've seen that it's already, you see the steel beams are up already. They're getting ready to continue with that. Those are incredibly important because they allow people to have that opportunity to continue to learn, as you indicated, in creative fashions. And for, my boys, they don't have to. I thought growing up that I had to be an engineer, because I was a first-generation college student. I wanted to get that degree, go into the workforce, and never think about college again. It turns out I was 40 years old and I was still in college. But it was incredibly important, and that creativity, it's so important. And I want to make sure that individuals understand, sometimes, they're told, oh, you need to think of the math and science piece. Don't be as creative. But that creativity can provide so many opportunities for them. It can provide a career and meaningful work and work that is pays well as well.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that a lot of people kind of get stuck. One of the things that the student, her name is Crystal, by the way, was talking about is how EPCC gave her the opportunity to kind of switch around and test the waters. I think that's one of the beautiful things about what we offer as an institution. How important do you think it is for students to not feel stuck?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important. And so we're a pathways institution. We help students get on a path, but their pathways are not prisons.
Right.
And so, if you're, and the whole point is, you have a pathway, and if you look at, for instance, if you're looking at a STEM field, your freshman year, almost everybody in the STEM field is going to take similar courses, so that by the time you get to your sophomore year and you're looking at going into a major, then is when you make your decisions, but you've already had that path to see if you're on the right path. And I think that's incredibly important. The same thing that we do with our humanities. Many of our humanities students will all take the same thing, and then as sophomores they say, okay, I'm going to go into this area of the humanities versus this area, but they don't waste any courses. So I think it's very important, and I think it's a big part of what we do at the institution.
And as far as institutions, so you've been here 10 years.
Yeah.
I personally have seen the growth. We're growing just at an incredible rate. We're bringing the students back after the pandemic, trying to get everybody involved. What kinds of things are coming in the future?
Yeah, so we're at the tail end of the master plan. So we started the master plan in 2015. It was supposed to all be done in the fall of 2020. Obviously, we had a little thing called the pandemic that hit us in the spring of 2020, and so that delayed everything. And so as a result, we have the last two and the most significant projects, the Art, Science, and Technology building at the Valle Verde campus and the Rio Grande campus expansion. Those two projects are up. They will be fully functional by the second mini, right after spring break. They should be fully functional, and we'll be utilizing those. And then really from my perspective, it's really about rebuilding enrollment and ensuring that our students and our community understands that the college is here for them. We're the most affordable opportunity of higher education in the region. And so that we start to build back enrollment and really get our community to increase the educational attainment level. It's overwhelming. Again, the more you learn, the more you earn, and the less likely you are to be unemployed.
And who wants to be unemployed, right?
That's exactly right. And right now, at this point, there's no reason anyone should be unemployed because the job market is in such need of labor, such need of workers. But as it starts to settle, I want to make sure that these folks have the opportunity to go into a field that they really enjoy, a field that they believe in, as opposed to, I want them to have a career, not a job. A job you have to do, you have to go through. A career, you do it because you really enjoy it, and that's what you want to do. I want everyone to have that opportunity to make that choice.
Very good. And as far as students are concerned, what kind of advice can you give a student? Because I know that when I was young, I went to school and then I dropped out for a little bit, took a break. I mean, people take breaks, right? People aren't sure of what they're doing until they mature to a certain level, but you have to start somewhere. What kind of advice can you give the young people out there?
Yeah, so from my perspective, so first you talked about you were engaged, and then you got to a point where you said, I'm going to take a break. That to me is the way to go if a student chooses to go that route.
Right.
But I think it's incredibly important that they engage and enroll immediately after high school. And the reason I say that is the data is overwhelming. We've looked at the data from our region, and we studied 3 cohorts of high school graduates. If they didn't matriculate immediately into higher education, so the summer or fall after they graduated from high school, the likelihood that they would ever earn a credential was 1%. And that to me is devastating. Yeah, I want to make sure that, as I would tell high school students, I want you to have a 99% chance.
Wow.
And so I think engaging and enrolling immediately is key. I'm like you. I mean, I enrolled immediately, and then I meandered. Then I was in engineering for a while, for 3 years. Then I switched into liberal arts, and then I switched majors 4 times. But I found something that I really enjoyed and that I was engaged in. Then I started working in higher ed, and what I need to do to move up. Well, you need a master's, and a master's in what? It doesn't matter. So I got a master's in English, and
Nice.
I've shared with you. I was, during the day I was working in the Office of Enrollment, running enrollment reports. At night I was learning about Shakespeare in my classes, and that to me was very gratifying, and it provided balance in my life. So I was very, math and science during the day, running those kinds of reports, analyzing the reports. But in the evening, I was able to really enjoy that creativity and learn about, from my perspective, one of the greatest English writers in world history, Shakespeare,
Right.
and really delve into that and really enjoyed it, actually, and still do. One of the things I do is I read. At the pandemic, it was overwhelming for all of us. It was overwhelming for all of us, and there were so many hard things that this community dealt with, and members of the college community as well. But prior to the pandemic, I used to read, and I would go back and forth between reading for pleasure as well as reading, books about the field, higher education. I had to put that aside, and from March of 20, probably until December of 21. I didn't read for pleasure. I was so engrossed in what we were trying to get done at the college, making sure people were safe and secure as we possibly could.
Correct.
Making sure the college continued. So I finally started to read again, and I finished 1 book. I'm reading 2 different books right now, and I'm alternating between reading for pleasure and reading something about the field. To me, that's one of my escapes, and it helps me stay creative.
Absolutely.
It helps me engage. It helps me, and the written word is still something that to me is incredibly powerful. You get lost in that book. You start thinking about the kinds of things that are coming forth. You can see the picture in your mind.
Absolutely.
All of that's really important.
Absolutely. So if there's a couple of things that we can learn from you is just the fact that creativity is important, the fact that we need to keep going, and the fact that we need to keep focused on our education, because as you say, as long as you get educated, then you can indeed succeed. So I wanted to thank you for taking the time out to talk to us, because I know you're very, very busy. I hope you had fun.
I had a great time. Can't thank you enough. Thank you, Mr. Valenzuela.
Thank you very much. So once again, Miguel Valenzuela, you're here on Creative Thinkers, and we have a show coming out every so often. Please join us once again. Thank you very much.